good evening everyone. So thank you again everyone for joining us for our second webinar. Tonight, the same titles, The I in BIM, Catch Me If You Can. We are going to talk about the I or the information in building information modeling. As some of us may know, BIM as a whole refer to the process of all parties involved in the construction and life cycle management of built assets, working collaboratively and sharing data. However, the true power of BIM live in the I, or the information and all the information gathered, and from conception stage to completion stage, and it's not just stored, but is actionable. The I or the information that can be used is to improve accuracy, express design goal from the office to the field, improve knowledge transfer from stakeholder to stakeholder, reduce change order and field coordination problem, and provide insight into existing buildings for renovation project later on. Therefore, through this series of webinar, we would like to raise more awareness on the importance of the I in BIM. And throughout this 4 series, what we are on the second series, we will emphasize the importance of the I in BIM in project pre-development and post-development, raise the awareness of the I in BIM to be utilized by various project stakeholders in many environments, and discuss how BIM can lead to efficient working environment with no double handling jobs, reducing unnecessary efforts to meet the objective of project delivery. Okay, with us tonight, we have Associate Professor Dr. Muhammad Faris Kamidi, a Malaysian in Qatar. How are you, Doctor? He's from Qatar University.
Alhamdulillah, good. All right. Thank you for the invitation to Microcorp.
Welcome back to Malaysia in digital. We have Mr. Gavin Crum, who is a founder and a BIM consultant. Hi, Mr. Gavin.
Hi, thanks for having me on board. And I guess, as we'd say in Australia, g'day to all the watchers out there, and look forward to chatting about all things BIM and information.
And last but not least, Mr. Abi Sarwan, who is the director of 3D Tech Sdn Bhd. Mr. Abi?
Hi, Assalamualaikum to all. Good day. Thank you, Sha'rainon, for inviting me for tonight's event. Yeah, all right.
Okay, again, my name is Ahmad Sha'rainon. You can call me Sha'rin. I will be your host tonight. Currently, I'm working in Microcorp Sdn Bhd, and we are a leading provider in integrated workplace management system in Malaysia, and we deliver BIM for FM, as well as automating various FM activity throughout facility management information system. Okay, before we start, I have a few housekeeping. Everyone is on mute. If you have any question for a speaker, please feel free to enter into the chat session, and your question will be directed to the host, and we will be addressing the question at the end of the session. Or you can also ask by raising your hand at the participant section at your Zoom interface. We also recording this, and a recorded version of today's webinar will be available on demand after the live session. And also we have this event running on Microcorp Facebook Live. We are giving the speaker 15 minutes to give their insight, and after that we have 30 minutes for all the speaker sharing. And is our activity going to be start at 8:30, and we plan to finish our session by 10 or 10:30. Okay, without any further ado, we would like to invite Dr. Muhammad Faris Kamidi as our first speaker tonight. Over to you, Doctor.
Okay, all right, thank you. I think you can hear me now, right?
Yes.
Okay, so let me share my PowerPoint. So, okay, it's here. So is everyone seeing this now?
Yep, good.
Okay, all right, good. Okay. So, all right. So I think I actually attended the first session last week. It was very, very interesting. I personally learned a lot as well. So basically, I try to bring in. It is also. I'm also glad that I'm the first speaker today, because sorry, Mr. Abi, you might have prepared something and somebody might have talked about it, but it's okay. I think it is intellectual discussions. So for today, I would like to focus on understanding how the eye in BIM operates. So I might attempt to provide what we call a slightly different layers to what we have understood in the first session last week. And let's see how it goes on. So can I say we have about 15 minutes each, or less than that?
You have 15 minutes. If you have extra also, you can.
Okay, so I'm starting my stopwatch now. Okay, all right. Okay, so all right. So this is the outline of my sharing today. I will provide some preamble to give some overview about what layers there are when we say about the eye in BIM. And I think it is also important to understand about today's world, which is all about data enterprise. And I try to bring in some dimensions where is data. It is quite difficult because data is plural, sometimes is singular, but in general, it is plural, okay? But when I check the grammar, it is data is, so don't have singular data. It is always plural in nature. So I try to highlight data in BIM dimensions and try to bring down the layer a bit and try to what we call share what is metadata. So most of the time, I'm sharing this outline. Yeah. And then some way forward, I think in the essence, it is also good to see the big picture, why it is very crucial and essential to ensure the way we captured the information, the eye in BIM, it's also will provide us the what we call, if I can use the term, the greater platform for digitalization. So that will be the way forward towards the end. And of course, I will conclude. Okay, so this is where I live. Of course, I don't live in these skyscrapers, right? This is, I think, before we started, Sha'rainon, the moderator today, asked about COVID in Doha and stuff like that, and also the background in my screen. I mean, my Zoom screen. So this is the new areas, the West Bay. Okay, so as somebody in AEC profession, of course, to us, this is not only an image. This is not only a photograph, a picture. There is a lot more to it, right? And if I can move to the next slide and take this particular tower, which is designed by Jean Nouvel Atelier, the French architect. And you can see these are the typical phases from the design and then the execution of the construction process, and as the building operates during the commissioning, right? Yep. So for us, I think it is also, I know it's difficult for me to be more interactive, but if this is in the actual class, then of course I ask the audience. What we'll see here is beyond pictures, beyond images. So what we see and what we should be seeing is actually data. So data from the design phase, moving to the construction phase, moving to the commissioning phase, and it will go back to the operations and maintenance, which is very, very relevant to the 6th dimension or the 7th dimension of BIM. We are referring to the facilities management. So this is the essence of the very, very important layer that everyone in this AEC profession must understand. All right. So let's move to the next one. And another important thing to understand is data is the new oil. But when I say the new oil it is a commodity, right? So the more, of course, data comes in abundance, but not data is what we call crucial, or you can monetize them, you can turn into money, enterprising, and later on, of course, we heard things like data analytics. Oh, my internet connection is unstable.
Yeah, we are okay.
I hope I'm still good. Okay, I hope I'm good and everyone hear me well. All right, so with this understanding, all right, so we know why all the top, if you go by the Fortune 500 list, easily the top 10 companies in the world are no longer oil and gas companies, but they are data-driven enterprise. So I'm referring to companies like Google is always there, Microsoft, Facebook, Amazon, Uber. All right, although the very essence of Uber business is about moving people around, but it is very, very much about data. And as we are aware, data is always there. It has been there, all right? But in today's world, the way we organize data is different, all right? So if you look at this photo, the first one, this is the first hard drive. It is just a mere 5 megabyte designed and developed by IBM in 1956. You can go inside that box, and this, I always share this story because when I was a student, and even when I did my PhD in Japan, we use a lot of this floppy disk. I think it is only 1.44 megabyte. All right. So I still keep one. Not one, a lot of them. So the story is, when we were packing to move, because it's going to be a huge move because we are going abroad. So I bumped into all these floppy disks that I used during my university years, and I showed this to my eldest daughter. And you know what is the response of today's generation? And my eldest daughter said to me, "Oh, Daddy, you 3D print the save icon in the computer, this save icon."
Yeah.
Okay, so it's totally different world, So they don't understand that the save icon was after this floppy disk. But this is the gone years, So if you look, now we are talking about the cloud computing, the cloud storage. So that's how data has been driving all the industry in the world. And of course, if you like to have the history about this storage, it is there. I will share this with Microcorp. I think sharing knowledge is good, so everyone can have a copy of this in PDF, perhaps.
Yeah, thank you.
And the speed of information that we are sharing also explains how we deal with today's architecture, engineering, construction industry. Okay, if you look from the very beginning, so this is the buildings that we built. Because the speed of information has exponentially become faster and faster and faster. With this understanding, if you look carefully, there are a lot of things happening. In short, data never sleeps. As we are talking to, or as I am talking today, some of you might be watching Netflix. If you look here, 764,000 hours are watched in one minute. Okay, that's how the infrastructure is like to support this data sharing. So with this, there is a digital enterprise, which is very, very data driven. So a lot of things can be leveraged, can be capitalized with this understanding on how we should capture the I in BIM. And I think Dr. Chetwan Fadil last week highlighted about this knowledge management hierarchy or pyramid. All right, so we understand the hierarchy from data, and it becomes information, knowledge, and wisdom. So there is one example there. So when you are at the traffic light, when you see the raw data, it means red. Then you know the information is that if you are facing that, you cannot go beyond this red light. Okay, and it becomes a knowledge in the context that the traffic light I am driving towards has turned red. Okay, so the wisdom is that if you don't stop your car, an accident might occur. Okay, so these are the understanding that everyone has to understand when you are in the BIM workflow or in the BIM context. But beyond this, as I mentioned in my outline, we when you want to promote or enhance the performance level, and of course we now understand everything is moving towards digitalization. So the digital business model, so these are the things that is crucial for us to understand. Okay, I need to move some of my what we call because I don't see 30% of my slide. Oh, but it's okay. All right, but so I think because there are I see some of the participants here, but it's okay, don't worry. And as you can see here, okay, so it is also about the metadata we are talking. Okay, I think there will be a part I will explain. There are more to data which is in the format of metadata. I will not go in depth with this because we understand all these BIM dimensions. Okay, but this is just like, I'm very sure most of the participants tonight are very well versed with what we are doing, BIM per se, you know, so we are talking about the authoring tool that we use. I try my best not to promote any brand here. So as you got your 3D models, then you can always enhance the model or enrich the model with the 4D, the 5D, and the 6D. And of course, it may go beyond the XD as well, okay? And another thing that I've learned, I think this is a very interesting story, but to cut the long story short, there's one time in if I remember correctly, in 2013, me and my team from various universities, we tried to do some research related to big data analytics in the construction industry. So we went to see a team from MDEC, Malaysian Digital Economy Corporation now. I think this is for the benefit of Gavin, all right? And the director was telling us, Malaysia in 2013, I hope things are changed for better now. Big data starts from small data. And when we say small data is that you must know the format in order for you to be able to do all this kind of, if I may use the word, fancy stuff, you know, the data analytics, or even now we are talking about artificial intelligence and how machine learning comes into the play. With IoT, Internet of Things, there are a lot of metadata captured as well. And you can utilize this in many ways. In our industry, of course, digital twinnings are there. So these are the layer that is essential for everyone to understand. And if I can show you some of the concepts of, I'm very sure there are a lot of discussions or arguments around LOD. I put everything there so that we don't quarrel, we don't argue. Level of development, level of details, level of definitions, whatever you want it to be. Okay, so this is one example of the curtain wall. Just a curtain wall of a building from LOD 100 to LOD 200 to LOD 300, which is from the conceptual to the complete or finished design, and then to the construction drawings, you know, so that will explain how this building will be, this building has been designed and how it is going to be constructed. So at that level, and of course, we also understand the more data you input, the more details you include, the higher the LOD, then the data will be much richer. But the question is always about, is this data necessary or not? I think it is also about at what phase the timing is also crucial. Okay, because we also understand there is a limitations in terms of, maybe not so much in terms of the computer software, but in terms of the computer hardware. Not everybody can afford supercomputer, for example. So, and this is just one example of, I cannot move my slide now. Just hang on. Where is it? Okay, all right. So beyond this, there are a lot of other what we call elements that you include. Okay, so in the BIM context, these are the things that we will be concerned of depending on the project TOR or project objectives or whatever what we call final outcome that the company or the client wants to achieve. Okay, so and all these things that I show you will obviously link to the LOD that we try to develop, and also the dimensions in BIM. For example, if you are talking about, if I may go back for a while, if you are referring to come up with the simulations of the construction process, then the 4D time associated with the cost are also crucial. Some of the things that we have done, of course, I'm an educator, so I deal more with the students at undergraduate level. We make sure the students, by the time they graduate, regardless of their major, they can be architect, they can be a quantity surveyor, they can be a project manager. They understand the idea of doing 5D BIM. So that is very crucial, okay? Because this, from the project management point of view, time, cost, quality is always important. And of course, another thing that is crucial is try to bring everything on the same page. We are referring to the common data environment. Okay, so I think many of us are aware about this, but as you can see, the phases that I'm referring to, we are referring to the project information management, especially in the design and construction phase. And then we are referring to the asset management systems, when, you know, this is very relevant to facilities managers. And of course, the whole thing, it is so essential to ensure that the data that we have or we collate will support whatever project objective that we want to achieve. And beyond common data environment, what is more crucial nowadays, which I found quite a lot of experts around the world talking about, not only common data environment is important, it is also to ensure the CDE is connected to all the stakeholders of the project. Okay, so this is another layer which is crucial, because if you have a data that is in a common environment for the project, but if you don't make sure the data is connected to the relevant stakeholders in the project, then I would also suggest that it is quite it is not useful to do so, you know. So this is the big picture about how capturing the eye in the BIM environment, or in the BIM systems, or in the BIM workflow are important. So these are the things that we must ensure. All right, so now I will jump straight into the metadata. As you can see, the iceberg is there. There is no Titanic, there is no Leonardo DiCaprio, there is no Kate Winslet, because Titanic has already sunk. Okay, we are in the 21st century now. All right, so if we go by definition, metadata is data describing other data. So it derives from the word meta, derived, or the prefix meta derived from the Greek word that means beyond. Some even says it is the invisible data that is hidden, the background data. Or, you know, there is a caption, more than meets the eye. I think when you see something, there are actually more stories to it, which is invisible, which is hidden. Therefore, in the context of BIM, these are what we already know, especially when you use the authoring tool, when you actually draw the box or draw the what we call or you put something from the library like the staircases. So this metadata will automatically generated within the authoring tool, which is in the 3D dimension. So these are information added to the object in the BIM model automatically. Okay, but that is pretty standard depending on what authoring tool you are using. As we are aware, when we move to a more sophisticated phase, for example, when you try to add the MEP, all right, the dimensions which can be the aircon, HVAC or whatever, piping, plumbing, a lot of things are there, and also you can what we call try to import all these available in the internet objects. So there are also metadata supporting this object. All right, but sometimes the metadata are not there. It also depends on you still have to input information or data related to it. But in general, these are also known as materials or the properties of the object or parameters and attributes. And as we understand the dimensions in BIM, so for example, when we say 4D and 5D, the time and the cost are associated. For example, when we do the simulation and we try to highlight what cost has been achieved within the timeline. For example, if we are designing a school or okay, make it a more simpler 28 stories hotel, business hotel, which with 200 rooms, maybe you need 2 years to do it. So if you develop the animation by integrating 3D, 4D, and 5D BIM together, there will be a lot of metadata in the background created by whatever computer tool that you are using, right? So this is important for you to understand. Okay, this is one example of a photo, right? Okay, I think it is also important to highlight here that most of the time metadata exists because we are using a lot more digital device today, okay? Of course, metadata can also be created manually, okay? Even if you use Excel, you can create your metadata. But the point is that a lot of metadata today are generated automatically because of the use of the popularity of digital device. So this is one example, you know, and I think you can understand that there is a reason a lot of filters nowadays exist. I mean, like when you selfie, then you try to make, you know, your what we call your eyes bigger, or your like myself, you know, I'm quite chubby, so I try to what we call try to make it a bit more oval and things like that. So these are the manipulations, actually the manipulations of the metadata within the photo. So yeah, Sharin, yeah, you can intervene, yeah.
You look flawless.
Okay, all right, maybe because of the background. All right, if I okay, let's move forward. And it is not only about information that is related to the technicalities of the photo, or in our case, in the BIM model that we develop. It can also be other data or other metadata. For example, like this cat. Okay, so you know, you can input the geotag with it. Or for example, like if you want, if you have a digital device in your cat, so that when he went somewhere astray and you think the cat are missing the way back to your house, then you can actually use the device to find where is the cat now, all right, using this digital device. And of course, the metadata will provide you that kind of information in order for you to know where is the actual locations of the, in this case, the cat, okay? So I try to make you understand why metadata is important.
Yeah, currently Malaysian government is using metadata a lot for the scanning of the QR code for COVID-19 visitor.
Yes, that's another good example. Yeah, I should bring that into the slides as well. Okay, so in the BIM workflow, so I think I've mentioned in words. So this is what happened, right? So beyond for example, you just model a slab, so maybe the typical dimensions are there, but using more parametric authoring tool, of course, we understand all computer tool, authoring tool that is associated with BIM workflow has this parametric, what we call characteristics or features, right? So this is what you can add to the level of the detail of the slabs we are talking about. So more information there, and this information is later on at whatever dimensions that you are dealing with will be very, very useful. Depending, for example, if you need to know from a maintenance point of view, okay, for example, when should you change this? Of course, you don't change the floor slab, but assuming this is the timber strip on the, in one of your bedroom in the second floor, then of course, this metadata will provide you that level of information that is required at that point of time. Okay, let's move quick. Okay, so another interesting thing that has been developed, I try as much as possible not to promote any brand here. So beyond typical way of doing or using BIM, of course, we understand the collaborations among the main actors, stakeholders, but now people are also talking about open buildings, I mean, like people can go beyond looking at the model. They can also dive in and try to look into more details. So this can happen among all the project stakeholders, right? We are talking about the architects, of course, there are so many kind of engineers, the civil, the structure, the mechanical, electrical, and stuff like that, the project managers. So what I'm trying to suggest here, try to conclude now. All right, and then of course, I will not deal with, these are some of the metadata we highlighted about the attributes, the parameters. It also gives you the value, right, and all the details about that describe in this case, the particular wall that it can be anything in the objects that you are utilizing in your building or in the BIM platform that you are using. But the point is that I think most of it is actually a national what we call initiative, and because of this emergence of abundance of data information, so there is a serious need to start taking care of how this data can be governed, and we are referring to standardization. And there is initiative in terms of achieving international BIM object standards, covering all these things. And in the essence, it is all about curation of assets, right? Curation of assets. And if I can go quickly to some of the initiative that has matured. So this is by the United Kingdom, the National BIM Standards. Okay, so they have what we call this connected. They even highlighted connected construction information. Right, I highlighted about the connected data environment. So in Australia, they have NetSpec. So in New Zealand, they have NZAC Asset Management Scheme. Right, so I think there is one examples how this are captured. Okay, so if you can see here, this is just for metadata standard of a wastewater. Okay. So there are very details, and of course we always ask about Malaysia. I think obviously I think CIDB and Malaysia BIM Center, my BIM Center can do something about this. I'm aware they are building up the library. Maybe Mr. Abi can shed some lights on this. So I think this is something that worth doing moving forward. But always remember, metadata is also a double-edged sword, as you can see here, So all these avid photographers, when they go to all these safaris, so they must make sure to turn off the geotag. So when you are operating your facilities, so you must make sure the security level, right? So in short, secure your data, because certain stakeholders, certain people, certain level of what we call operators can only see certain types of data or metadata. Okay, so this is the construction site of the future. Okay, we are fully aware about this. Of course, the fourth industrial revolution is always there for us to ponder. So this is where we are now, slightly 8 months after 2020. Then this is where we are heading, the digital technology waves. I think if you look beyond 2040, right, self-healing materials, advanced robotics, so it just we are just wondering whether we are going to be out of job. All right, so I will not we leave it as a question mark there. And these are the future trends predicted by the World Economic Forum. And whatever we see here, IoT platforms, location detection technologies, 3D printing, smart sensors, big data analytics, all this can be linked into our AEC industries, right? So therefore, capturing the data correctly, appropriately right from the beginning is very, very crucial. Of course, we hope we will move to the smart industry, but again, when we say smart industry, our construction industry, we must put things in place and in order. And at the end of the day, we are talking about the cyber physical systems. And as you can see in these graphics, there's a lot of metadata beneath it that has to be connected, all right, virtually or manually. So that will move us towards a smarter city and also utilizing all this, fourth industrial revolution technology in the future. So in short, I would say we must be able to use data in its real value. We must ensure data is interconnected to make it more meaningful. And don't forget about good data governance. This is crucial because always remember data is the new oil. Thank you. I think, thank you for listening. I will stop here. Sorry if I take longer time because of the technical problems. Thank you so much.
I like the idea data is a new oil, you know, because I involved in the data work. I love to be, after this, to be called one of the oil company.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Dr. Faris. So next speaker, let me listen from Mr. Gavin Crumbs about the eye in BIM. Catch me if you can. So whether we can catch him or not.
Yeah, hopefully people will be able to catch me.
The sharing Kevin.
Are you turning off across the share screen or?
Yeah.
I'll just share my screen now. Just bear with me. Okay, whoops, I'm in Revit. Is my screen coming through?
Yep.
Excellent. So I guess I wanted to focus on the topic tonight, but also from a perspective that I'm, comfortable talking about given my own experience. But I'm going to be focusing on catching the eye in BIM, as we spoke about. Just a little bit about me for people that haven't met me or seen me before. I'm from Australia in Sydney. I have an architectural background. I've worked for about 10 years in this really fun and interesting industry that is AEC. I've typically delivered using Revit or managed teams delivering projects using Revit during concept through to end of construction phase. So typically, whilst I haven't prepared facilities management platforms, I have prepared models with the intent of being handed over to a facilities management team for the client. At the start of this year, I actually became a BIM consultant. So I currently work in a business called BIM Guru, but other people might recognize me from my YouTube channel, the Aussie BIM Guru. And I'd like to thank Microcorp, obviously, for having me on board. It's always great to meet people around the world and sort of hear about how they're using BIM and also what they think about BIM. It was a really interesting presentation before. I really enjoyed even just breaking down the words and understanding the concepts, but I'll sort of expand upon that a bit as well. So I'm not going to market my business. The only reason I put this slide here of my 5 business services is because 2 of them I find are really important to information in what I do on a day-to-day basis for my clients. I find if you don't have a good strategy or you don't have a good education on data and information, it's really hard to get the results that you need out of BIM. So I find that these are my 2 services that really tie in to what I'll be talking about to give it a bit of context. So I guess my focus for this presentation in this case is going to be looking at why the iron BIM is so important, as well as this also just some challenges and some problems that I come across quite regularly that relate to information, both personally, but also my clients as well. Also, I want to touch on sort of why these challenges are happening and what we're doing as an industry to face them. And I just sort of put a little diagram here just to touch on a few of the really major data management systems or schemas emerging in the industry. And I guess a lot of us have to really start questioning ourselves. Are we leading the pack? Are we ahead of the game? Or are we sort of just doing what we know works and makes us money for now and maybe heading towards a brick wall? When you deal with information, it's always really important to know where you stand in the industry on how developed your information maturity is. So a really critical point that I always encourage my clients to think about. I like to look at information a little bit like a pipeline. Essentially, we're starting at the beginning of the pipeline and sending data through to the project to the end. And I guess the pipeline never technically finishes because eventually it goes and supports a built asset. But essentially, if there's one thing wrong in the pipeline or there's something missing or someone hasn't installed the right part, we're going to lose data along the way. We're going to lose the oil. Data is the new oil. I guess it sort of seems to tie into this visual metaphor as well, which is quite funny. But I guess why is information so important? I mean, probably most of us realize that BIM is essentially fully dependent upon information. Without information, there's no BIM. We're just dealing with 3D models or 2D drawings at that point. So it's really important that our model is representative of its information correctly. For example, on the right here, I've got a door and I've told the door it's a pipe. As far as the model knows, that's a pipe. It's not a door. So even though we can graphically make something look a certain way, if the data behind the scenes isn't articulating that, then we're really doing a disservice to our clients and to facilities management outcomes, which will be entirely dependent upon these practices. And I guess the information is really critical because BIM is all about process and communication. And in a digital age today, pretty much all of that also relies on information as well. So I guess one really big issue that I see throughout the design, construction and facilities management process is that data changes hands and changes formats a lot. And this introduces a lot of risk if it's not managed and articulated properly in some sort of control strategy like a BIM management plan. So as we pass between either team members coming and going on teams and taking ideas with them, handing over models between design and construction or to facilities management, and also just exporting our models and our drawings to different formats, we do introduce a lot of risk to manipulate or lose data along the way. For example, IFCs are a really common model format that I see used for export these days, but a lot of people don't export them properly and most of the information is lost. So a lot of your Revit data, for example, won't make it to an IFC export unless you map that IFC properly to be built from the Revit data. And this is a really common problem I see with what facilities management teams are given at the end of a project to work with. And as well as that, obviously, a lot of us are still seeing paper being used on site as well. It's obviously changing. I'm seeing a lot more tablets and iPads out there now, which is great. Not promoted by Apple, by the way, any brand will do. But I guess I'm still seeing a lot of paper in the way that we design and construct and communicate. And I think the sooner we can get away from that, the more important our data and our information will become. Big boom, little I guess is what I'm sort of calling this bit. So I guess a model is easy to understand for most people because you can see it. It's something that's in 3D space, it's tangible. You don't need to understand BIM to understand what you're looking at when you look at a 3D model. And a building can be sold, it has value, it has tangible value throughout the project. We understand we're going to be selling apartments, for example. But how do we make the client more aware of the value of their information beyond this? Well, that can be a real challenge. And even just also the design teams, sometimes certain stakeholders in a design team won't really value what information means. There's a bit of an attitude of just get the drawings out, doesn't matter. And we really need to be more careful than this because a lot of the time we are playing with pretty valuable deliverables for our clients. So I do find sometimes the I is maybe a little bit too small in the word BIM. I'd sort of rather it was the other way around, I guess. We've probably all seen this diagram before. It's called the McLeamy curve if you haven't seen the name before. But I guess failing to plan is planning to fail. And I find with information and data, this is usually the killer. You know, if you're not templating up front and setting things up from the start so that you don't have to set up all the data and the information every single time. So for example, getting all that metadata to be correct from the start, then that can really be a massive drain on the project resources. And sometimes it means that you may not actually have the time to deliver an efficient information structure for a handover model or format. As well as this, I find that some firms aren't researching enough and staying ahead of the pack. A lot of the firms are sort of sitting where the turtle was before. They're not keeping up with the industry because they've got clients that don't value information right now, but maybe in 10 years' time, they might be asking for it. And at that point, money now might not be money later. As well as this, just I find communication is also really critical to making an information strategy work. People need to be talking to each other constantly about whether it's working and also things that might need to be changed throughout the process. We do have a habit especially in AEC, of sort of going head down and not communicating as openly as we could to make a project really get delivered properly. We do sort of isolate ourselves in mental silos sometimes. So I do find that these are some of the critical reasons why information isn't always necessarily managed properly. I find that timing of information is something that I'm having to teach my clients different ways of looking at. There's a common belief in AEC, but also in BIM, that information should always develop over time. We shouldn't give away too much too early. So the idea of LOD, I guess, we're only committed to do an LOD 200 model, so let's only use generic walls. So I try to shift my client's mentality sometimes and say that sometimes there's no risk in putting a little bit more metadata in what we do earlier on, because eventually that's going to become required later. And it might even aid the communication process and increase the chance that you don't miss something earlier in the design process. So I find that information is actually a lot more valuable for us the earlier we can get it into our model and into what we do. So I find that this is something I need to teach a lot of people in today's industry. So for example, on the right, a lot of the time in design models of architects, they'll use just generic block walls. I typically encourage people to use walls with layers because they start to think about more detailed design requirements, and we're less likely to have to do rework later on. One really important point I think to make about how data and information is probably going to be managed in the future is that data is going to probably live outside the model for the most part. We're very used to most of our metadata and our data coming from the authoring environment, but we're seeing a lot of intrusions into the industry by many database programs, and also a lot of tools and applications that can move data between the web and the model. And I think this is really going to lead us to find that we can actually store a lot more data outside the model than we think. Some data obviously needs to live inside the model because it's driving elements within the BIM environment. But I think that this will really change how we can structure and format our data. So we're not necessarily as beholden to our authoring tools. It's more about how we can manipulate our data, how we can data smith what we do. Obviously, the cloud is probably the right place to have your head in at the moment. So having your head in the clouds isn't the worst thing right now. A good example of a cloud platform that I've seen that really emphasizes the value of information and data driving a process, in this case, coordination typically, is a platform called BIM Track. But I see platforms like this as a likely future for facilities management platforms as well, in that not necessarily everything has to be driven by the authoring environment. Sometimes you can hotspot and tag elements and create a database that lives over the top of the model itself. So the model is almost like a background to a bigger data ecosystem instead. So I think this is something that people should be aware of and should be experimenting with as well. There's obviously a lot of money in this environment you can make as well, if you can find a way to make this obviously the platform of the future. Another thing I just wanted to share that I think a lot of people probably are aware of is that obviously if you can invite people to the conversation of information and data on a project earlier rather than later, you stand the chance that you're going to get a better outcome. Obviously, we need to ask the client what they want out of their model as early as possible. I know that can be a pretty scary thing to ask the client sometimes, because sometimes they don't care sometimes is what they might say, but we do need to sort of shift that narrative, saying that, listen, there's a lot of things you can get out of this model or this BIM asset, I guess you could call it. It's not necessarily always just a model. And that will maybe lead them to understand that there are actual things that can save them money, such as getting a performance analysis data out of their active building using a BIM integration later on. And as well as this, if you can get in touch with the facilities management team that your client operates with, I found that can be a really big step to opening up the potential for what the information and the data should be on a project, whether it be a classification system or even just a common asset tagging field or strategy that will mean that their database can actually talk with the output of the BIM model once it's handed over. And I think it's worth pointing out that a really great platform to help people communicate that I've seen lately is called Plannerly, or what used to be called LOD Planner, where you can host your BIM management plan on the web, and you can also tie in tasks and LOD evolution throughout the project and assign it to various stakeholders. I think a really important thing that I also find I need to teach my clients is that sometimes data needs to be fixed at the source. Sometimes you need to put a bit more time into how you structure your data in your authoring environment so that you can actually support a more organized and consistent information management strategy. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the client's information management strategy. It can just be an internal organization standard, which means that you can use things like apps and scripts to streamline processes. So information has value, not only for your client, but obviously for you as well as an architect, engineer, business owner. So I think it's worth being aware of, say, some of these strategies on the left that I've listed here that a program such as Revit can support. And some of these can support industry standards like Uniclass classification systems using assembly codes. Other ones are unique to Revit, for example, shared parameters. You can see on the right, this is my shared parameter file that I use for my business and also for my template. And you can see the data is heavily structured, and it's not necessarily a common industry standard, but it's one that at least is clean enough that I can map it to other data standards if I need to. You can see here some of the outcomes that I can get in a BIM model using my template, where I can actually achieve more than one classification system at one time in the model. So sometimes having more information isn't a bad thing, as long as the people using the models know what information is important to the project goals. And this sort of ties back to my point about templating. If you can get some of this base information into your BIM models earlier, you don't even really have to think about it. Once it's there and it's set to some sort of industry standard, you're already going to be giving your client a much more robust deliverable that they can probably find things to work with. And even, say, the cost planner would really appreciate probably having fields like Uniclass or Omniclass fields in the model, because that enables them to also interface with their cost planning software if they're using it as well. As well as this, I find that data is really good just for internal review purposes. This is a model that I'm actually developing for training in my company, but I've been really careful with how clean I've kept the data in the model. And you can see here, I'm able to use like the wall types are really easy for me to audit because I can just select them by entire type at once. For example, I'm looking at all the fire rated blockwork in this model, and I found a couple of walls that were incorrect in this case. So I find that internally, if you can get data to be set up really well, that can be a real benefit as well. I also had an example that I was actually working on before this webinar. This is the same model. And you can see that the amount of custom data and metadata that I introduced to my content, it's quite heavy, but I can do a lot of things with this data. And once I've got this family set up the first time around, I just keep using it on project after project. And as a result, I find that you really only have to do the hard work once if you put it in at the start. So I find that's really important. As well as this, I always try to emphasize that we should be focusing on modeling things well, not just drawing things well. The model shouldn't be a means to get some drawings. It should really be something more about getting a meaningful asset that the client can view and utilize. And inevitably, I think one day this is going to be the focus of BIM. We're not going to be as focused on having to legally deliver a set of drawings. Eventually, I think they will realize that a robust BIM model can be just as effective for building a building. The challenge is going to be obviously giving the industry confidence that you can legally rely on a model for tolerance, accuracy, QA. There's a lot of issues that come with it. But I think that in the meantime, there's no excuse to be doing low quality modeling. Ideally, you should set your fee as an architect or an engineer to support the highest quality model that you can give to your client to meet their needs, in my opinion. So I do always emphasize that modeling it right is going to give you a better outcome in most aspects, especially in terms of information and data. So I guess my final thoughts from what I've spoken about is that planning early, I think, is the key to actually improving the quality of information and data throughout the project lifecycle, all the way up until the facilities management stage. So if you can develop systems and templates that are sort of meeting industry standards, and if you're not aware of industry standards, take some time to research them, such as IFC and COBE, then you'll find that you will actually probably make your clients and a lot of the project stakeholders a lot more happy naturally, such as the cost planners. But they'll love you if you can get a classification system in your model without being asked to do it. As well as this, I think communicating amongst the team as early as possible and as effectively as possible and as openly as possible is the key to making this all work. I think if you can introduce the client to the value of their data as early as possible, that will open up a lot of opportunities for you and them and the project as a result as well. So I guess involving everyone is the key. So I hope that you've sort of enjoyed just my thoughts on the value of information, and I look forward to sort of exchanging thoughts with the panel after as well. And thank you for having me on board.
Okay, I like that, because of the most of us most of us is always forget about. Yeah, sometimes we did a lot of activities with the computers.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that really bring it all together. And I guess if we can focus more on giving it the model more quality early, then it gives everyone a better time at the end of the process too, ideally.
Yeah, and then the good part is that the thought about the communication. This is always we have it, but we don't have. Okay, next. Thank you, Gavin.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your insight about it. Okay, how about now we invite Mr. Abi. Mr. Abi, over to you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think I have two very tough presenters to follow.
Right. Becca, I like the flag in your shirt.
So I'm going to share my slide. All right. Hold on. Okay, how is that? Is that okay?
It's coming.
Okay. Can you see the slide right now? Okay.
Yep. I saw the horse.
Yeah, right. Everybody is using like computers and building. I'm going to use a horse. All right. Okay. So
I saw the horse before at the Dr. Faris slide also.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you for having me for this. I think you have a good seminar series, right? When I was contacted by Dr. Sola, okay, I was a little bit. I don't know. I'm excited, and also I think it's a challenge that I would like to take. And basically, on my side, okay, what I'm going to do is that I'm not going to be very technical about this, right? But since we are talking about informations, right? The way that I'm going to, what I'm going to actually discuss a little bit is basically about, process, and basically, what I think about what I think is happening within the industry in Malaysia, especially, all right. And that's where I'm going to, bring this presentation. My presentation too, right? So hopefully I can do this, all right? Okay, so my name is Abi Sarwan Mazran. Okay, so I'm the managing director and founder of 3D Tech Parametric. So I've been involved with, the construction industry for the past, how old am I? 20 years per se, right? About 20 years. And the first 5-6 years I was actually in an architectural office, okay, working with architectural projects, right? Doing design, and one thing that I find that I would like to do more than anything else is basically working on computers, all right, and trying to actually sort out design and basically design challenges and trying to actually put in ideas, okay, using computers, all right, applications, all right. I didn't use much CAD, okay, even back then, okay, so I go straight up to modeling, all right. So this is where what I understand the value of having a very good model as part of information that we're going to actually send to our customer. And sometimes it's just to, it's easier to get some idea across using a model when you're talking to even bosses or your colleague, okay, so that they would understand your intent or your design, okay, more holistically, rather than trying to actually go and explain it, okay, in a form of a series of drawings, right? In terms of projects that I've been involved with, right? So I've been involved with quite a number of projects, okay, from small bungalows, right, to a large 66 stories, buildings, right? And been working with educational buildings as well. So what I've learned along the way is basically I've learned quite a lot about how it is important for you to have your information ready and how you can actually communicate with the stakeholders that is going to be involved working with you, okay, with the projects that you have, right? So now, this is what I have on my, if you follow my company Facebook account, all right, 3D Tech Group, okay, you can see this, sort of like an image there, all right? So this is our page face, all right, that we have in our Facebook, all right? And what I try to actually convey here is basically when this was this image or basically information that I put here was created about 9 years ago, all right? So and I still think that it is true, all right, in a way that how people or industry players actually look into BIM, all right? So what happened is that when you look into BIM, there are a lot of people involved, right? And the challenge is always how you are going to make sure that the information that you have is going to be able to be shared amongst not just with the team members that you have, all right, but also with other people that is going to be involved with the entire projects that you do, right? So what happened is that as you go along throughout the process, okay, you can see that not only that you are going to be, there from the very beginning to the end, but there would be more and more professionals that's going to be involved together with you, okay, throughout the journey of actually finishing up a buildings, right? And ultimately, what you wanted to do is that you want to bring these informations into facility management, all right? So this is where your buildings that you design, okay, on paper now actually becomes an asset, and it need to be managed, right? And of course, throughout the life cycle of that particular buildings, okay, there will be more work that need to be done, okay? And what is important is that, okay, everybody understand the fact that, okay, all informations need to be carried over throughout life cycles and must be able to be collected at the very end, okay? Because what we are seeing right now, okay, especially in construction industry in Malaysia, is that we put in a lot of emphasis in getting informations in a drawing form to be very, very detailed and complete, all right? But the challenge is always on how you can actually, coordinate all these informations, right? I'm not saying that, drawings on paper is valued less compared to what you have digitally. But of course, okay, what I'm saying is that, okay, there are a lot more informations that can go missing, all right, if you have all this information separated, okay? So that's how it is, all right? So one thing that that is very important to understand, what I'm trying to do is that I'm keeping this light, all right? And basically, I think those that actually join these webinars, okay, okay, why people or organizations get into BIM, but I just want to actually go and just remind everybody, okay, what are the important quality that that organizations wanted to achieve with BIM, right? Most of the time, okay, when you talk about BIM, okay, the number one thing that organizations wanted to see, or a team wanted to see, or the owner wanted to see, is that in the form of visualizations, right? Because what is important is that how you are going to share, okay, your design idea, your thoughts, all right, or basically all the information that you wanted to put in, all right, in a better way, right? So this is where visualizations comes into play. The second part of this is basically, working on BIM, or basically having a BIM process, okay, put in place so that you can actually have a better coordination, right? So in a way, what everybody wanted to do is basically everybody wanted to have a clearer peace of mind. Okay, they wanted to have a much better, experience doing coordinations, right? But it's not always the case, right? I mean, even for the projects that we have BIM, the challenges is always about how everybody that is in the group, is going to be able to understand, okay, what, basically what is being coordinated, okay, what need to be coordinated first, all right? And basically one of the number one challenge, for me, right, or for my team, okay, doing constructions in Malaysia, is basically the level of understanding with regards to the informations that is provided, all right? Because oftentimes, okay, when you deal with, the more savvy group of people that you have in your team, then you can actually push to be digitized, all right? So that means that you can have, a very good, models, okay, that you can share, okay, but also oftentimes, okay, that's not the case, right? Where when you actually have a project that go to construction, okay, this is where you start to deal with subcontractors, okay, plumbers, okay, or installers, okay, that would not really understand, or they don't really appreciate the 3D models that you have, right? That's the kind of challenge that we have over here in Malaysia, all right? And the other part of of BIM that most organizations wanted to actually look into is basically cost estimation. You want to have a better cost estimation, or you wanted to actually have a better understanding about how or what you do is going to be impacted by costs. But that is not entirely true for some projects as well, right? Because the nature of the contract itself, right, where everything is basically locked, all right, and there's no VO allowed, all right, and basically that is also a challenge, all right. So then this cost estimation value for BIM, it's not being really appreciated, all right. And the other part of it is basically, for analysis, all right. I'm not seeing a lot of this, okay, but of course, if you have a BIM model, then what you can do is that you can extend this information for, the building management, services, all right? Or basically, if you are going to actually go and put in IoT sensors and whatnot, okay, so that can be integrated into, the models that you have. All right, so estimations can be done. And of course, last but not least, okay, when organizations wanted to go into BIM, they are talking about they want to better plan their buildings, right? So that means that they wanted to, have better or clearer, view down the lines, okay, for their constructions, all right, and to be able to anticipate, okay, the kind of work that need to be done, all right. But overall, all right, when you talk about BIM, all right, basically what you wanted to achieve is you want to achieve better buildings, right? So you wanted to create better buildings, okay? You have a better process during constructions, and of course you have a lot more a lot less mistakes, okay? So it would actually be a much better buildings that you can go and have and manage, right, as an asset, all right? In order to understand, the current situations that we have, okay, especially in Malaysian context, right? What is important is to understand that, okay, we are, for the past, I think about 20 odd years, okay, or 30 years, we are basically driven by CAD or CAD, all right? So, just to break it down, okay, so in CAD, you can have two lines, all right, and that two lines could mean anything, all right. But what is important is basically, I mean, there are more layers to CAD, all right? And I mean, and what could happen is that, I mean, you could actually have something like this, all right? Two line with a hatch, all right? Then it becomes something else, all right? And basically, I mean, if somehow you actually mess up the layers and whatnot, all right, what could happen is that the intention for that particular image earlier is basically to create, you know, a tree or something like that, all right? So these are the challenges that that we are facing, right? Because I mean, in the construction industry right now, there are a lot of emphasis still on CAD, all right? I've seen quite a number of projects whereby, okay, when you wanted to actually, I mean, provide the BIM models, all right, always the requirement is that, hey, can you follow our CAD standard, all right? So can you follow and make sure that all the lines that you put, okay, is as per what have we done, okay, for our CAD standard? Because I mean, like what Mr. Gavin said, okay, which is true, all right? So I mean, the fact is you can actually have very good templates and then it would cater for all this, all right? But the thing is that there are some things that is better served in the form of a model, all right, rather than, you know, I mean, dumbing it down to 2D, all right? And then those are the informations that you're going to share and basically becomes the backbone of what you do in construction, all right? So these are, I mean, these are the problems with CAD, all right? Because, I mean, even though we have a very good, I mean, 3D models, okay, what could happen is that due to requirement or basically the deliverables that you need to do for projects, okay, you need to somehow dumb it down, all right? And it becomes a set of drawings that later is going to be shared, all right? And it's not uncommon, okay, for, I mean, a project, even for some sort of like a BIM project in Malaysia, I mean, so-called BIM projects in Malaysia, what happened is that all the informations, all the important informations are basically CAD information, right? Because that's the easiest, simplest, or the lowest common denominator that is going to be shared amongst all stakeholders. That is going to be, I mean, shared amongst all stakeholders, and those are the informations that is going to be used to drive the construction, all right? So, yeah, all right. So then it is important for us to know, okay, I mean, what is what is BIM, okay, for a project? All right. So when you talk about project, all right. I mean, a project is basically, I mean, this is a definition by Wikipedia. I think you can read it there. So basically, I mean, when you talk about project, okay, you need to actually, this is something that you would normally not do alone, right? So you would actually go involve quite a number of people, all right? And basically this is going to be a project, your project team, and what you wanted to do is that you wanted to achieve your, I mean, a goal or an aim, all right? So this is where, I mean, it could be, I mean, this is very challenging for every team members in the team, okay, because I mean, even after doing quite a lot of projects, okay, I mean, you would know that, okay, each project would actually be different, okay, from the last one that you've done, all right? So there is no, I mean, there's no one project that's going to be similar, okay, from the very beginning to the end, all right? And especially when you actually have a projects that require you to actually have, I mean, BIM, how are you going to actually go and, I mean, cater for that, all right? So, I mean, let's say that, I mean, you are having a conversations, okay, between, I mean, let's say that you are a project manager, right, or BIM manager, right? So, and you are having these conversations, right, about a project, okay, that would require you to deliver, I mean, BIM, all right? So, what happened is that normally, what I'm seeing is that a lot of project owners, okay, would say that, okay, this project requires BIM, all right, okay, and the thing is that everything must be on BIM, but the problem is, okay, there is no clear definition about what that BIM is going to be, all right, because most of the time what we understand is that, okay, for owners, okay, when they say that they are interested in BIM, what they are interested is in basically to have a digital twin, all right, so that means that they wanted their project that they started from the very beginning, from design, okay, through constructions and up to handing over, there would be a digital twin. So they are getting a building and they're also getting a digital model of that particular buildings so that they can push it for okay, the next level, which is for facility management. All right. And what most people in a project would say is that, okay, we are going to do that. Okay, you want BIM? Okay, we do BIM, right? But without clear indicator of what BIM is for that particular projects, all right? What everybody would do is basically they are going to go back and start to push on a panic button, all right? Because okay, I mean, it's very difficult, or to me, it's very scary, right? Because if I go to any project owners or basically a client that says that, okay, I want BIM, but if you probe further to them, okay, they don't understand what BIM is all about, all right, and how the BIM could be. I mean, what they understand about BIM is not clear, and it make it very difficult to to narrow it down. Then it is going to be a challenge, all right. So what you could end up with is basically, I mean, having a very long conversations, all right, with project owners or stakeholders that don't have a clear understanding about what BIM is. All right. So that is why, okay, if you are talking about catching the eye in BIM, all right, so we need to, for me, okay, what is important is to understand the entire process, all right. And what is important is to, have a look into, okay, what is important for that particular projects, okay, from the perspective of BIM. All right. So I mean, this is a definitions under the PS 1192. All right. So what you can see is that, okay, if any project owner or stakeholders that, yeah, I mean, if they are interested in BIM, okay, this must be shared with them first. All right. So one thing that is very important is for any employer for a project, okay, they must start with their they must start with their proper employer information requirement. All right. So if you're getting into a BIM project, okay, most of the time, okay, what would happen is that there would be there would be a clause, okay, in your project's requirements, okay, or basically in your tender documents, okay, stating that, okay, this is what they want. All right. But one thing that could be a problem is because sometimes, okay, what happens is that there is a lot of emphasis being put into a project that the project need a BIM execution plan, but I don't see enough, okay, informations, okay, from the higher up in the form of the employer's information requirements, right, or EIR. All right. So that is why if there are any projects that you're going to get involved with, all right, what is important is, check with them, okay, what is your what is the employee information requirements like. All right. And that is a very important starting point. All right. Because then, okay, then the next step could happen. Then you can start to actually look into the BIM execution plan. All right. So I think Dr. Faris talked about LODs, right, and what LOD meant. All right. But if that is not very well defined or basically discussed, okay, in your EIR, that could become a problem. All right. And what is important is that I think in this instance right now, right, when you talk about EIR, there are a few things that you need to actually understand about, okay, what is within the EIR. All right. So normally an EIR will actually have 3 components in it. All right. The first one is the technical component. The second one is the management components, and the third one is the commercial components. All right. So this is where you're going to actually, look from the technical perspective. Okay. The software platforms, all right, the definitions of levels, all right, so the LODs and whatnot, all right. And when we talk about software platforms, okay, this could be a very, could be a very difficult, discussion if, what is not discussed is basically how this is, how the informations are going to come together. All right. And basically, what we've seen in Malaysia is basically everybody would just say that, okay, they're going to pick a platform, and everybody would just go and agree on that particular platform. All right. But what could be a challenge is basically, even on one single platform, you'd have issues with regards to versions and whatnot, all right? And if you start to actually look into a project that require integrations via IFC, all right? And this is where it becomes more challenging, because then it allows more software to be used, right? But the more important thing to understand is that the more tools that you use, the more information that comes from many sources. What could happen is that there would be information loss, okay? And that will actually make it a little bit a lot more difficult, all right? So this is why even on the from the EIR creation forms, okay, it must be clear in terms of how this is going to be tackled. It need not be in depth or in details, okay, but it must appear in there that this is being looked at, all right? And the second part is basically management, okay, details of management process to be adopted. What is important in here is basically identifying roles, all right, and responsibility, or what should be the makeup of the team, okay, that is going to be built for that particular projects, right? So oftentimes we see BIM requirement, okay, but what we didn't see is basically those people that is going to be involved, all right, in delivering that process, all right, or basically, if you are from the client's end, okay, what is missing sometimes is basically a person that is going to actually have an overview in terms of how this is going to be delivered throughout the entire projects, all right? So, that is the other part that is very important to be looked at, okay, when you look into, the requirement for BIM, all right? And the last part is basically on the commercial part, okay? So this is basically BIM model deliverables, timings, all right? Data drops, all right? And definition of information purpose, all right? So this would actually becomes your your deliverables that you do for that particular projects, and this would actually becomes, okay, your milestones, all right, for the deliverables that you are going to have, right? So I cannot how should I emphasize this enough to say that, okay, you need to have a very good employees information requirement, all right, for any BIM projects that you have, right? Because without this, it's very, very difficult for you to to carry it through, okay, the projects that you have, right? So now, okay, on the other part of it, basically for any BIM project, okay, what is important is that you need to make sure that the information that you have, okay, within the projects are properly governed, all right? So you can have many tools to actually look into this, but what is important is basically you must have a very strong policy. And what you wanted to do is that this policy must govern, your people, process, and technology, all right? So I would like to go to the basic fundamental of this, is because, okay, sometimes, oftentimes when I get into projects, or basically, the projects that we get involved, people tend to forget about the basic things that need to be done. All right. So in this case, okay, when you look into a policy, okay, this must be, a very a good suitable policy, okay, for that particular projects, okay, taking into considerations the capabilities, all right, and basically looking into, if you're looking into any type of technology, or you must understand, okay, where you are on the with that particular technology, okay, is this going to be a technology that you can actually use, okay, throughout the life cycle of a project, all right? Because I've seen some projects where they have to abandon, okay, certain type of technology, right? Because what happened is that there are some changes to that particular technology platform that doesn't allow them to use it anymore, all right? So that could actually be a challenge, all right? And then what is important is also to look into, people, all right? So how you're going to ensure that you can have, all right, you can put as much information that you want into a model, all right, or to your database. But if they are not, okay, smart enough people, or people that can understand that information, so, okay, that is going to be a challenge for that particular project, all right? So we've seen this with our projects where, okay, we have all our informations in the cloud, okay, we allow everybody to download all the informations that they need, all right? But if they are not tech savvy enough, all right, or if they still don't want to drag them to a level that you wanted them to be at, okay, that is always a challenge, all right. So that is why for some of our projects, all right, basically we are more like you know, enabler for them, all right. So I mean, we put in the informations, all right. We are also the party that is going to, you know, somehow manage that, download it for them, okay, let them have, all right. So
I like that.
I know that it's counterintuitive, right? But that's what's happening, all right? So, I mean, there are plenty more that need to be done, all right, to make it acceptable. Okay, one thing that is quite good right now is that, okay, everybody is quite comfortable with, I mean, things like WhatsApps, all right, on the phones and whatnot, okay? And perhaps if technology can go to that level, all right, I know that we always wanted to better ourselves, right? But sometimes technology need to come down to that level so that it can be used in that manner as well, right? And the other thing is basically about process, right? Because the information that you're going to have is basically it's going to be carried over, okay, throughout the entire building life cycle. So I mean, it involves many organizations, many people, many hands, right? Many ideas, many, you know, changes and whatnot, all right? So this is where I mean, the process need to be clear. The problem is that I mean, what we are seeing is that we can create process, right? But if it doesn't go to their basic or doesn't tie to their basic process, okay. So, for example, if you're talking about contractors, is their claim process, right? If it doesn't tie to that, okay, then I mean they would find a way to, you know, skirt, all right, or basically find a shortcuts and do something funny, all right, and basically not follow the process, right? So this is where I mean sometimes you need to make sure that you have the buy-in from your I mean your project owner to somehow tie certain things to the deliverables so that, you know, I mean it goes to the, you know, to the money side of what they do, all right. Okay, then okay, you can actually make sure that, okay, this process would somehow be followed, all right. And last but not least, I mean, talk about technology, all right, and basically we are talking about the right kind of tools, all right. But I mean, what we are seeing is that there are also issues with regards to technology whereby, okay, I mean, sometimes technology go just too fast, all right, and it's difficult to follow, all right, and basically what's happening is that, okay, I mean, trying to understand technology takes longer than, you know, trying to do it in traditional way, all right. So these are the things that have become sort of like a sore points, okay, when we actually deal with project, all right. So basically I mean that's all from me, all right. I mean, I don't have any slide after this, okay, so this is my end slide. And basically, I mean, from my side, okay, I'm trying to actually keep it light, okay. I'm just trying to make everybody to remember about the basic of what BIM is, right? Because, you know, when you deal with I mean, if you are in the know, okay, or if you are a BIM involved person, all right, so that, I mean, sometimes we can be a little bit detached, all right, from a group of people. There are a lot more people that don't understand, all right, I would say, okay. So it's not common, you know. So the things that you do every day is not common, all right. I mean, the things that you deal with every day is alien to most people. So that's why, okay, sometimes it's good to, you know, just look at the basic and try to see it from that perspective so that, okay, maybe when you go to the office, okay, next time, then, you know, let's talk about these simple things, right? And I mean, try to understand, to have a fundamental right so that then, okay, maybe we have a better BIM I mean, experience, okay, for a project, all right? So I think that's all from me, all right? So I'm going to pass this back to Sha'rainon. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Abi. Okay, I did something today, you know, I think whether, I don't know, you agree with me, we have a project of BIM in Malaysia, but they don't put the money in the I. They only put the money in the B and in the M, you know. They forgot to put the money in the I. So
Correct.
that's why when we talk about why you don't have the information in the model, you don't have budget for that, you know. Okay, let's have we we have a lot of people sending questions. I think we have 10 questions, Dr. Sola.
Wow.
So maybe Dr. Sola would like to share questions, list of questions.
Yep.
And to whom the question been addressed, you know. The first question goes to Dr. Muhammad Farish. So, is there any structure methodology to manage the metadata? So, yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you for the questions. All right. So, okay, as I've explained, although at our side, we are dealing more with, of course, we are part of the author who created the metadata, but at our from our perspective, we are deemed to be the users of the metadata.
Yeah.
So when we want to know, is there any methodology or structured methodology to manage the metadata? So we have to refer back to the a little bit of a computer science kind of stuff. So from this perspective, the answer is yes. And I think all of us here aware that the speakers, as a speakers, we are not computer scientists, but if it goes back to what we call the data mining and all this kind of stuff. But that's why I think in my presentation, I also, towards the end, I tried to explain that there are a lot of national or country national initiative to ensure that this metadata is captured properly, appropriately, and there is a standardization to it. So my take on this is that if you are a BIM practitioner, because you are AEC professionals, then the best way is to refer to this what we call the national documentations or the national guidelines on how metadata is being standardized. Okay, because it also include about not only about creation, but it also include about how this metadata can be managed and later on to be utilized, and also from commercial point of view, it is also important to be monetized. But
Yeah.
having said all this, as I put a question mark, I still believe BIM or perhaps my BIM Center should take a leadership initiative on this for Malaysia. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, right. Because we have a plenty and a lot of metadata available, but we doesn't know how to access it sometimes. It's like as simple of the in our digital, in our phones, in our photo that we capture using iPhones. You know, actually there's a lot of metadata behind it. You know? Okay, Mr. Gavin, so this is a question to you. Articulating data is very interesting. Terms used in Mr. presentation. What are the required skill set in order to improve data communication from one phase to another?
Yeah, it's a great question. I might just also expand on the last question really briefly, because I was thinking a good reference, if the person who asked the question is still there, to check out is Building Smart's IFC schema. That's probably the closest thing I've seen to like a data, possibly you might call it a metadata mapping initiative. But I guess I'll jump onto this question, but that might help as well. So I guess I really do agree with the last presentation I saw. I think it was great to take BIM back to the basics. And I think that the most important skills to bring data from one phase to another are really communication and being able to engage people of many different skill levels, because I guess those handover processes are typically between people who have different understandings of what BIM is going to do for them and what's important for the model or the handover process, what the data format is. So the way you communicate that to those stakeholders is probably the most important skill set you'll need to refine. That's probably the biggest challenge with a handover as well. There's a lot of meetings and emails, phone calls to make sure that that moment is going to work, because that's obviously a high pressure moment for the project when a big handover occurs. Like, I mean, you're going to get a lot of audits and potentially things that need to be changed. But I think beyond the technical skills to actually do the changes or to maintain the data, I would say communication is the key, and being able to engage all the stakeholders in different ways. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. Communication is very important, to make sure that we we are able to deliver BIM perfectly or in the correct way or smoothly.
Yeah.
So third question, Mr. Abi, one of the risks in BIM is data ownerships and copyrights. What is your opinion on these issues?
All right. I think this copyright questions has been asked, I mean, to me quite a number of times. Okay, and my opinion is still, I mean, you can copyright your design, right? But at the end of the day, okay, so I mean, there are some contracts that says, okay, if whatever that you do for this particular projects would belong to the project owners, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, in a way, I mean, what we are seeing is that, okay, the ownership rights would be, I mean, would belong to whoever that creates it. Okay, I mean, it governs by the copyrights law, right? I mean, if the issue is basically about data security, or basically if somebody is going to go in and then, you know, I mean, take away, okay, the informations that you've created, all right, then, okay, this is where I'm very, very, I mean, from my perspective, all right, in my opinion, this is where for the industry to ensure that there would be lesser of this, I mean, of this data theft happening, all right? So we need to be on the cloud, all right? So I mean, for the simple reason being, okay, most organization, I mean, some people are not comfortable about this, and they say that, okay, I rather, I mean, store it in my computer, in my server, right? But I mean, how much are you spending on the security of your server? Okay, that you have, right? So
They forget their money also is not in the bank.
Pardon?
They
Yeah.
forget their money also is not in the bank.
Yeah. All right. So what I'm saying is that, okay, I mean, yeah, I mean, if you're concerned about copyrights, okay, if you're concerned about people coming in, or basically, I mean, theft of copyrights, okay, so I mean, if you digitize everything and it's being put in you know, a very secure environment, okay, I don't think that would be an issue. All right, the problem right now is that, okay, we have different organizations with different ability to secure their data. All right, and that's why people, I mean, organizations start to say that, I mean, I rather go and put it on paper, because now it's just on paper. But I mean, that doesn't mean anything. All right, I mean, and basically, all right, I mean, this is something that, with the right technology, with the right security levels, right, with the right approach, if everybody go and follow the correct procedure and processes, it's not going to be an issue. All right, because it's going to be governed by what is being said, okay, on the security level, on the access levels, and so on and so forth. All right.
What do you think, Gavin, about these issues?
Yeah, I pretty much agree. I guess data ownership is probably the main thing that stood out to me here, less copyright, because copyright's always been a concept in our industry, regardless of what form data takes. So I think data ownership's an interesting one. I guess that's where things like the EIR become so critical. As was discussed previously, that you know, where data is stored is so crucial, and how data is stored, and who stores the data, how long they store it for. That they really do become, I guess, the drivers for those issues. And I guess at the end of the day, it depends on why the person's asking the question. A really common reason I see people ask this is because they have a whole bunch of BIM content and they want to protect it from people stealing it and using it because it gives their company competitive edge. But I guess that's another element, whereas this is just the data that comes out of the elements. And really, at the end of the day, that should only be valuable in the hands of the person with the asset. If someone, you know, obviously had that data and had no context for what the data really meant, it doesn't really help them. But yeah, the data ownership and data security, I agree, is probably the crucial point there. So yeah, it was well answered.
Yeah, you are welcome to answer the question number 4 also.
Okay, what is the most issue? Yeah, I mean, the IFC schema is a challenge, not only, I guess, in Malaysia, but in nearly every country, maybe not the UK, because they're quite advanced right now with IFC and Kobe. But probably my biggest challenge with IFC, and probably it was sort of touched on earlier, is that not everyone is going to be an expert on IFC, just like not everyone's an expert on BIM. And some BIM experts aren't even experts on IFC. So it's become a very niche field of expertise. But nearly every project they're asking for it just because they know it's something they should be asking for. They don't necessarily understand what they're going to use that IFC for. Whereas IFC is a format that's all about a schema that's heavily defined. Everything needs to have a lot of information set up in a very particular way. And I guess if that isn't defined well in like an EIR or a brief, or people don't know which metadata fields matter in the IFC output, you're usually not going to end up with a successful outcome. So that's probably the biggest challenge, I think, just that the understanding isn't necessarily there. It's more the understanding that, you know, we need IFC, but, you know, why do we need it? What do we need it to do? Are probably more the issues that we probably come across. So yeah, so that's probably the main issue for me. Yeah.
I think if you are in the BIM contract, if you don't have the IFC word, the contract is something, it's not complete, you know.
Yeah,
you
it's
must put
magic word.
IFC.
You have to control. You just do a Control F search and make sure the word's in there somewhere.
Yeah. How about you, Abi? In Malaysia, in IFC, is it?
I mean, yeah, I've seen, I mean, I've seen not many, right? But there are a few projects that emphasize on having an IFC data, right? But they just put it as, okay, we need an IFC, right? So basically, I mean, the actual understanding about what IFC is and what it meant and what can be used for, most of the time it's not clear, right? So the most issue is basically, you're asking for something that you are not very clear of, you know. So you're asking for I mean, you're just complicating it because, okay, you're not, it's not in detail in terms of what you wanted it for. And and there's also some misunderstanding about what IFC is supposed to be. All right. So there are some projects where, okay, IFC is acceptable, but then they try to actually go and use it as an, as a live project data is changed, where it can becomes very, very, problematic. All right. Because it then depends on, the platform that you're using. All right. So, most applications, when they receive IFC data, what the application would do is translate that into a native data that would actually be useful for that particular platform. All right. So, I mean, this is, what I see as most the most problems with these IFC requirements. They put it in, but if they just put it in as, as a requirement to archive the data, I think that's okay. All right. But if the way they look at it is, okay, I need IFC because then IFC becomes the main collaboration, information that's going to be used by multi-parties with different platforms, that would always be a problem.
But I think I saw many contracts that mention IFC in Malaysia. But when we hand over the project, nobody bothered to check whether they are actually IFC or not.
That happens in Australia too, actually. Even if IFC is heavily defined in the contract, usually people seem to get away with just doing a basic export with no mapping of data, and no one checks it. Yeah, it's quite common.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good initiative, but I guess, yeah, it's probably sort of in line with what Abby was saying before, where maybe some people need to sort of slow down and let people actually catch up, you know, with some of these very complex systems that are beginning to emerge, because IFC is very complex. There's a lot of types of elements, and, you know, it's not a complete system, it's still developing. So I think they're up to IFC 4 now, so it's constantly evolving too. So to catch up to it is quite a challenge. I feel like it probably won't really become a thing until there's a program out there that can just generate a clean IFC without someone having to manually set up all the mapping and make it manually work.
Yeah, Dr. Faris, yeah, this is about IFC. Do you have any ideas about?
Yeah, I can. I obviously understand the challenges the players or the BIM practitioners facing around IFC. But I think my take on this, obviously we also understand it is the leading industry standards in terms of the format for interoperability and whatever it can achieve. But I think due to the rapid emerging digital technologies, I presume there could be a new leader soon that will what we call streamline the format. Because we totally understand that when we design and construct a building and then we commission and operate the building. So if there are, if I can use the word players or leaders of the industry that can streamline this format, which is beyond IFC because of the digital devices in the whole what we call ecosystem involved, then I think that could be a more, if I can use the word, foolproof system in terms of managing whatever we want to achieve with the building deliverables or the building project we try to design and construct and operate in the future. So that's my, not to say prediction, but I think it is moving towards there.
Yeah. I believe there must be somebody going to lead and change. There's no longer IoT names. Maybe they change it, or maybe they have evolved it due to IR 4.0 requirements, the metadata. So, okay, this is for all three. The best part is how you describe the different LOD 500, LOD 400 in 500 in Malaysia, Australia, perhaps maybe in Qatar. So,
oh, okay, all right. Okay, of course, again, this is very global. I don't want to be like dictating that it has to be what it has to be. But again, it goes back to what is the project objective, what are the deliverables that must be there. And of course, from contractual point of view, is this what whoever stakeholders or players involved has to deliver. So, but my take on this in general, if the project decided to go with the BIM workflow, the real value that can be tapped or leveraged is actually towards the end. Of course, there are many values throughout the what we call the phases or the supply chain. But if you were to achieve or if you want to be able to tap on the 6D or the 7D dimensions of the BIM, then perhaps the as-built model is very, very essential. So if that is in the mind, then I think the full LOD, LOD 500 is important as part of the deliverables. So I'm suggesting that. And of course, in between, there is LOD 300 in order for during the construction phase for people to understand what to be built in details and what are the what we call the data involved into it. So 300, 500, all right. But in between, I think it is really up to the project objective, because I know some even use the word like LOD 350, to provide. For example, I think maybe Mr. Abi can give more details. When you design a toilet, okay, so there is a few what we call typical details or similarities, all right? So you don't really have to, put everything in this model because it's typical. I think there is a way to go around with it because it is not only typical, it is also repetition. And of course, we also must understand, as much as I'm aware, the software is up to the mark, but maybe not the hardware, all right? Because the hardware also translates into the affordability of the company or whoever consultants are dealing with this. So I like the other speakers to provide their input. Thank you.
I mean, yeah. I mean, you're right, Dr. Faris, right? I mean, what is important for a project is, I mean, what is defined as the EIR for that in the EIR for that particular project, the definitions of the LOD, okay, that need to be delivered, all right? And it boils down to that particular project needs, right? Now, what I'm seeing is basically there are projects, okay, there are contracts that is being, put out there that says, okay, they need LOD 500 without thorough explanation about what that LOD 500 is, right? And basically, what we are seeing is that, okay, LOD 500, the LOD definitions just refer to the AIA LOD, BIM Forum LOD standards, right? So that's the common documents that is being being referred to, okay, as an LOD definitions, right? But I mean, for the projects that we are working on, all right, so when we look into the LODs, right, so I mean, we do have we do have certain conditions that require us to model it heavily, all right, to ensure that when it goes into installations of some of the more complicated parts of the buildings, we are taking care of all that is required, all right? But I mean, that would happen selectively, all right? So I mean, that's how we actually do the models that we are working on, all right? Because there's no point, I mean, to a certain extent, there's not really much points to load up the models, okay, with all the informations, but at the end, nobody can open the model, all right? Or at the end, okay, I mean, nobody can get access to the information that you put in, all right? So that's why the way that we work on the LOD requirements that we have, right, is basically, I mean, based on what we wanted to achieve, okay, with that particular exercise. And we want to make sure that it is helpful for the project, all right? So I mean, that's how we drive, okay, the use of LOD in the projects that we have, right?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I agree. From an Australian perspective, it's not really that different. I mean, what you've both described is what I would agree with, that LOD 400 is typically a process-driven outcome, that not the whole model doesn't need to be LOD 400. It depends on what purpose it's used for, or if that particular contractor is even using BIM. I mean, if you're not delivering a BIM model for a contractor, LOD doesn't really become a concern. I guess it's more just, the concern of whether BIM was required in the first place for them. But yeah, typically in Australia, we'll be doing LOD 300 up until construction tender award. And then a few contractors might deliver LOD 400 just to assist with some of the more detailed installation requirements, such as a modular framework for a duct system, for example, where the details actually are quite critical to assessing the feasibility of the building. But LOD 500, I do find, is very commonly misconceived as I guess, an improved version of LOD 400, whereas you can actually go straight from 300 to 500. It's really just capturing the final build condition of the project. So I usually tell teams that LOD 300 or 400 is, what are we going to do, and LOD 500 is what did we do? Is sort of how I simplify it down to just saying, if we're handing over a model, we do need to capture anything that changed during construction, should be reflected in the BIM model if it's required by the original LOD requirement that was set. So if you've got an LOD 300 requirement and then a wall moves by 100 millimeters during construction because there was a design tolerance issue, LOD 500 would say you do need to move that wall 100 millimeters, but you don't need to go and add all the details that weren't there originally, because I guess that was the intent of the original LOD, that the way that element was represented. So that's pretty much how I see it. And we do also see LOD 350 from time to time that does come in, and usually that's a misunderstanding of, I guess, the intent of LOD 400, and that you don't need to necessarily hit LOD across the board, across all the contractors and all the consultants, that it's a process-driven outcome. LOD 350 is usually, I guess, a hybrid of the two, in that you're not necessarily modeling everything in detail, but you're picking a few particular installation elements to guide the construction and the install process. Yeah, but I agree with what was said. It's very similar in Australia right now. Yeah.
Okay.
If I may respond to Mr. Sha'rainon in Qatar.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think Qatar started to enjoy their oil money. I mean, I'm referring to the oil and gas, the real oil money, from 2010, and because of this rapid development in terms of I show you the skyscrapers. It's amazing in one of the area in Doha City, which is called West Bay. And of course, we know they are upgrading all the infrastructures because the World Cup 2022 is coming soon. So, and most of the consultants are coming from the UK and from the United States, and these people's, and before that, the client normally goes with all the star architects, So I think most of the speakers, our background is architecture. So there are 10 Pritzker Prize winners that has designed and built their buildings in Qatar, in Doha alone, right? So with that background, so I would use the word money is not a concern. So in many ways, the consultants will tell this is what you needed as long as you pay me. So I don't have the percentage, but I would think because the recently completed multi-purpose it is actually a multi-purpose hall, but there is a mini stadium inside where you can run, you can jog. The design manager is from Malaysia, my very good friend. So I know that they go all the way to LOD 500 to have the as-built model done and delivered, and also to plug or tap these what we call sophistications for the facilities management. So with that in mind, if Qatar University can afford it, I think most of the big corporations, multinational companies based in Qatar, they go with that trend as well. That's my take on it.
So I think they pay the eye, you know.
Yes, yeah, you're right. They pay the eye.
They pay the eye. Okay, so it's good one, you know. Last question to Mr. Gavin, you know. In order to have a good BIM model that can include all the required eye by the end of the project, is there any structured process that we can refer or guide?
So I guess there's two processes. Hopefully one of them is your EIR or your original brief. That's ideally captured some of that. But I guess if you're looking for an industry standard or something that's already written down, I would say that, like, if you have a national framework that can help, for example, in Australia, I refer to NatSpec from time to time. And obviously the IFC guidelines, I read those quite carefully because I can see that they're going to impact how we structure our data. Some of my data I'm structuring in my own personal content. I'm already structuring to suit IFC because I can see it's going to be, I guess, necessary in future. But I would say that really, ultimately, the best process is really one that will emerge out of engaging your client and your team and saying, listen, what do we actually need to do in this project? Because as Abby said earlier, like, every project is unique, every project is different. There will be unique requirements that are either driven by the client or by just the nature of the project or the building type that it is. For example, a school would have very different information to a commercial tower because of the nature of how the facilities management would operate that building. So I think that that's probably a better place to start than trying to find one way to do it based on the way the industry will tell you, because I don't think you'll find one model that suits all. But I guess, again, definitely go to Building Smart and have a look at the IFC schemas if you want to see at least the industry's attempt to standardize information structuring. But in the meantime, just make sure you communicate with everyone on your project as early as possible, I guess, is the point that we're all constantly reinforcing.
Yeah. I think last week we heard from Mr. Rodnan, I think, about the client doesn't know what they're buying. You know?
Yeah, I saw that presentation and I agreed with him as well. I actually spoke to him after the presentation and we agreed on pretty much all the points that unless you can tell your client what they're investing in and make them believe in the value, then you may as well not be doing it, is the challenge, I guess, yeah.
But this week we learned about that the client forget to put the money in the eye. You know?
There's no eye in money.
Yeah.
If I can say, they need to eye the eye, invest the information.
Yeah, you are right. Yeah, we learned something today. You know, they invest. I mean, they need to invest
in information.
There you go. We caught the eye.
I think now we got the eye. You know? Okay. Yeah. So, do you have any more questions, Ola?
I think we have more questions, but I'm not sure if you are going to.
Yeah, I think we can have another 2 questions for you all. Is it not too late?
I think is it almost midnight in Sydney now?
Yeah,
that's okay. I usually stay up quite late here. I'm running my business, so I'm not in a hurry to leave. Don't worry.
Okay,
I'm more than happy to share my knowledge.
No, we're just joking.
Okay, we can have more 2 questions.
Yeah, please, sir.
Okay.
This question to Mr. Abi, talking about the importance of the EIR. There are any methodology that can be used in order to all information that required for the project can be captured and fulfilled in the objective of the project at the end of the day. Oh, it's quite a lengthy question.
good question. All right. So how can you get all the information required, okay, for that particular project captured and kept, and basically, yeah, you have it, you have everything. I mean, look, all right. If you wanted to actually have, okay, all the information that you wanted, all right. The first thing that you should ask yourself is that, I mean, what is, why do you want that information for, right? What is the information is going to do good for you, right? So when we talk about methodologies, right? So basically, I mean, what I always advise my clients to do is basically look into, okay, I mean, what are they going to do with this asset, all right? So I mean, if they are I mean, somebody that is not going to own the asset, all right? So they, I mean, if you're asking for, I mean, in the EIR, you do try to actually go and push it to, I mean, FM, because at the end of the day, you are going to sell off the asset, all right? So it's going to be managed by a different group of people that would actually look into the project, or basically the asset, I mean, differently from the way that you look at the asset, all right? So, I mean, if you look into this, right? So, what is important is that go back to the requirement of the EIR, all right? So you look into, I mean, what is important to your organizations, right? In terms of what you wanted to achieve, all right? And where, and how much of an importance of this data that you are basically, I mean, forcing, okay, your consultants to or your contractors to build for you, all right? Because at the end of the day, okay, it might goes to not, all right? Because there are quite a number of organizations that ask for all these, okay, but they don't even have a very, a very solid, okay, understanding, or basically a very solid FM systems, okay, that they would be able to, push the data to, okay, once the project is done, all right? So, I mean, the way I look at, the way I look at it is basically this, right? So, I mean, if you, the best thing for you to do, okay, in order for you to be sure of that you can get all this data that you wanted, all right, is basically to understand, okay, what is your end, okay, it's going to be with that particular projects, right? So if you are looking at, okay, pushing this to FM, all right, then what you should do is basically look into your FM requirements, all right, and then try as much to capture that, all right, during your very beginning, all right, from design, constructions, and so on and so forth, all right. But if you're basically selling it off, all right, and you're not going to maintain that building for long, it's just during the DLP periods and whatnot, and it's going to be passed over to the next, all right? So then what you might want to do is basically just, make sure that you have put in all these EIR requirements that would basically enable you to do better during the more critical part, of what you're working on, all right, which is up until constructions and then handing over, all right? So I mean, that's my that's my my take on this, right? Because if you try to gauge, all right, or try to push this to, to the area that you are not in control, then that's going to be an issue, right? Because you might not really capture, or you might might be delivering under or over what is needed, okay, on the next level, all right?
Yeah. So it's like I said, how many, whether you want to capture all, whether it's you.
Okay, I think we can go for the final question.
Okay. Mr. Gavin.
Was this, did we just look at this question, or in order to...
Oh, okay, that one.
Oh, there we go. Yep. So the challenge of validating data in COBie formats for facilities management. I think the biggest challenge is just who understands the format and the schema, and if they are the people that will use the data at the end of the day. Because most people I know that are experts in COBie tend to be on the authoring side, not on the use side. So the hard part I find is that sometimes the authoring organization, if they've done something wrong or they haven't mapped their data correctly, they're probably going to be the last people to admit that's the case. Unfortunately, we're all dealing with profits and money, and sometimes that doesn't lead to the best outcome. So I think that that's probably the challenge. I do encourage, and I think Abby mentioned this earlier, and I agree with it a lot, that clients should engage someone on their side that is an expert on the needs of the project from a BIM and a data perspective. So someone that's impartial to the consulting team and to the contracting team, who obviously all have money in the game, and there's going to be various motivations behind how they work, and maybe they're working within their contract, maybe they're working outside it, I'm not sure. But I think that's probably the challenge, and the solution is for someone to support the client in a much closer capacity with an understanding of the COBie format. And when they're given a format of COBie that's not correct or is missing information, they can recognize it more easily. Yeah, so that's probably the challenge and the solution. Yeah.
I do agree with Gavin on that.
Ivan?
Thank you.
I think
that a Windows update.
Yeah, I think the connection from Abby. Maybe Dr. Kamidi, if you have any comment regarding that question.
Yeah, okay. I think, of course, we are aware about this COBie and the format for the facilities management. I think most of the thing Gavin has said it very clearly, and I think I don't. To be honest with you, I don't really have a real industrial, doing this, so I reserve my comment. Right, but I think at the moment this is something that is available, and of course, this is something the practitioners are using. So that's my comment. Yeah.
Something I agree with you on, Mod, that you mentioned earlier is that the next platform we use will probably control these systems quite in an integrated fashion, that we won't have to manually set these things up. It'll be a more holistic platform.
Yeah.
So that might be a solution to COBie as well, that the platforms will be built to deliver COBie format rather than COBie coming out after the authoring programs are invented and having to manipulate them to deliver these data structures. So hopefully that will be a solution that might have a way that the client has assurance, because they say, well, we've exported COBie from platform X or whatever it's going to be called, and they know it has to be compliant because the software creator says this delivers COBie compliant data. Yeah.
If I can add on the Gavin's comment on that, I think of course it's easy to mention, but I think moving forward, I can see some people are saying digital twinning is just the rebranding of BIM, but to me, I think it is beyond what BIM can do. So I think moving forward, digital twinning is something worth looking at, and of course it will, try to cover all the dimensions and ultimately the facilities management.
Yeah, I agree. Digital twins are sort of like a reframing or a refocusing of BIM is sort of how I like to put it. That it's got some similar goals and some similar methods, but it's more focused on the final output or the asset, whereas BIM is more about the process leading up to that point, including that point as well. But digital twin puts the emphasis on what do we actually get out of the overall BIM process. So yeah, I agree. Digital twin is definitely worth investigating further.
I think we have a final question. Maybe we can go for that one, which I feel that should be to Mr. Kevin about the programming language.
I get this question a lot, actually, because I guess programming is becoming very popular in AEC. It's no longer, just for the data scientists or the computer developers. So I guess it depends. The programming language that I would say best suits your BIM or data management needs really depends on, firstly, the platform that you use for authoring, or if you're not an author, that the platforms that you use for data processing, they will really dictate the language or the program that you use. If you're a Revit user and you've seen my YouTube channel, you'll probably know that I'm a strong advocate for Dynamo. And if you want to move beyond Dynamo, you can also use the Revit API. And there are ways to also connect to databases as well, such as SQL databases from Revit. Obviously, this is a very complex thing to do, so it is like a very particular career path if you want to do this. Just keep that in mind. It's not for everyone. It's not even quite for me either. Like I do explore programming, but I'm not a computer developer by trade. If you're using, say, more abstract programs such as ArchiCAD or Rhinoceros, then Grasshopper is a great way to start looking at coding from a visual aspect, similar to Dynamo in Revit. But I guess I am also seeing people dabbling in Python, some of them for using it with Dynamo, but other people are using Python as its own programming language. They might be using like a platform such as Conda, which supports data visualization and the ability to sort of deploy your Python scripts. I would say Python is probably the best and most friendly programming language I've used so far. Yeah. As a pure programming language. But if you use Revit, yeah, definitely check out Dynamo. Lots of material over on my YouTube channel as well if you're interested in learning. So yeah, good question. Cool.
Okay, so like we have covered everything. Dr. Faris, is there anything else you want to cover before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think the last questions, I think this is a real challenge in the academia, in the university, you know, because I think first and foremost, I think this is one of the questions that has a long discussion in the last week's session about education and the bridge between the industry and the academia. But my take on this, first and foremost, as an educator, students come to the university to study, but I think the essence is that to make them how to think. So that is the most important thing. Of course, we are aware, especially when we are delivering professional degree to prepare the students, to equip the students to become professional. But then again, you know, a lot of other things you will learn when you are practicing. So I think the most you will learn in the university is 15%. I think Gavin and Abi and even Sharina, you will agree to this, right? But the real essence is for you to be able to think, your thought system. So it goes back to this issue about software, about which programming language and things like that. Of course, as the university, we support. I think there are a lot of what we call trends or direction moving towards micro credentials. For example, you may graduate as an architect, all right? But then you have micro credentials in using Revit, for example, or maybe in BIM professional certification. So that is the direction the university in general around the world is taking.
Yeah.
Probably adding to that, just I know we're almost finished, but as well as that, programming is something that I see as something you add on to your skill set rather than doing that first and then learning how to be an architect later. So I always recommend that people, even in the academic environment, they do focus on learning the base trade of architecture or engineering or construction, project management, and then the programming becomes a way to enhance how they can work in their skill set, rather than trying to learn all the programming languages and then become a better architect, because you'll find that the better you are in your base skills, that really gives context to all the software and the languages that you use. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, everyone. I think
Welcome.
I think we're good for now. Thank you for everyone for joining us. To all speakers, thank you for speaking with us tonight. We are grateful for your time and efforts that you took to share your thoughts and experience with us. Since we are entering a new digitalization era phase everywhere, your discussion were very timely. I believe we all can benefit immediately from the knowledge that you have shared, and we will always welcome you to our next discussion. Thank you again for your contribution to all participants. We will greatly appreciate it if you can give us some feedback regarding this webinar session. You can fill in the survey through the link that just posted in the chat room. Please take our few moments to complete the survey below to help us to come up with a better webinar session, for the future. And we hope to see you next week with our other speakers. I think next week we will going to have a lady speaker. So the title is "The I in BIM Catch Her If You Can."
That's excellent. I do actually hear from a lot of people saying they do wish that more women were represented in BIM. So it's great to hear that you've got a little bit of diversity on the panel. So excellent.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much, Dr. Farid.
All right.
Avi.
Right, thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank
And it
you
was nice to meet you all.
All right. Nice to meet you all. All right.
And,
Yeah, thank you so much.
and also special thanks to Dr. Sola for coordinating. You have been very
Yes.
efficient.
Thank you. Always.
Thank you, Dr. Sola. All right.
Thank you.
behind us. All right. Assalamualaikum and very good.
Okay, good night.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi.
Thank you. See you later.